Welcome back to Coffee Corner Motorsport, Full Beans the podcast. This is, of course, my weekly Formula One news show, F1 Espresso News, where I bring you all of the latest from the paddock to the podcast via the comfy surroundings of the shed, which this week, I'm pleased to announce, is a lot cooler than what it was last week. And that sauna we were sat in for the last episode. So thank you for those who tuned in and enjoyed that one with me. What have I got for you this week? We've got Valtteri Bottas, Sergio Perez, Cadillac and their future. We've got my review for the Formula One movie. Dad and I saw it on Monday night, so I'm going to give you a spoiler-free version of what I thought about it. We're going to be talking updates, specifically Ferrari and what they're bringing to Austria. We're going to be talking about what has been the most exciting document to ever drop today, and that is the elusive driving standards document that the stewards decide whether or not to penalise a driver during a race weekend. Sounds boring, but if you're like me and been waiting literally years for this document, highly exciting. We're going to go for that one. And then we're just going to finish off with a bit about Coffee Corner Motorsport and just with, a bit of an honesty chat, if I'm honest. So if all of that takes your fancy, you've got enough time to make a cup of coffee, grab a drink, whatever it is that you use to sit and listen to this podcast. You're going to have me for 30 minutes. Enough time, hit that subscribe button, follow, like, whatever is available to you on the platform you're listening to this to, because you'll be notified when the next episode drops first and foremost. And it also helps other people get visibility to the podcast. So if all that takes your fancy, sit down, strap in, and let's give it some full beans. Okay, Valtteri Bottas, Sergio Perez, TikTok or Instagram story that he put, and of course Cadillac being at Silverstone talking to drivers. And what does it all mean? Fundamentally, you've got to remember one thing. Cadillac are under no pressure to announce their drivers. They're under no timeline for it. The FIA don't need to know. It's only a public clamour to who's getting those spaces that's really driving this agenda. There is nothing to stop Cadillac waiting, even to the end of the season if they wanted to. Now, I went for this on live this week. If I'm a betting person, where am I announcing my drivers? It's Austin. Let's be honest about it. It is the Austin Grand Prix, which is October time. That's where I'm going to do a big announcement. That's where I'm going to do a big reveal. If I'm Cadillac, that's what I'm going to do. A huge marketing event. You know, we're talking a livery. We're talking drivers. We're talking a press launch. We're talking in America, still all the thunder. That is where, if I'm launching my drivers for Cadillac, I'm doing it if I was in charge of the social media. Who do I think is going to get it? I think there's three names that seem to be in the frame, which is Valtteri Bottas, Sergio Perez, and of course, Joe, who's the Ferrari Academy driver and former Sauber driver. There is an outside talk of Schumacher, there is an outside talk of an American in there, but I'm going to go through my reason to why I think this, but also just how Alpine are actually holding all of this up, it feels. So, Valtteri Bottas dropped that social media clip. Everyone's been going mad about it. Is this a soft launch? Is this the start of Valtteri Bottas to Cadillac? Truth be told, looking at it, I think it's Valtteri poking a bit of fun, but also being serious in staking his claim for the Cadillac seat. He wants to be back in Formula One. He is making absolutely no hiding the fact that he wants to be back in a race car, that he wants to be driving on the grid. He's also just putting himself out there. He's been open and honest about it. He was talking to Gunther Stein about it on the Red Flags podcast just this week, saying that he's in talks with Cadillac. It's something we've been he's alluded to in the past. We know that Valtteri is definitely on that shortlist. Is that social media clip a soft launch? I don't think it is. I think it's Valtteri just poking a bit of fun at the vacant seat, but also reminding Cadillac of what he can bring to a team commercially. We know that Valtteri doesn't have the biggest commercial backers, but what he does have is a great personality to market your team, especially if you're a new team who need to break into Formula One fan bases and get fans across. Valtteri ticks that box from that point of view. I've said this many a time. What he lacks in terms of the commercial firepower, he brings in not only that commercial side of him in terms of opening up to a new audience, but also, more importantly, he brings with him a experience that wins you races, that helps you develop a team. He knows what it takes to win and be part of a successful Formula One team. And of course now, at this precise moment of time, he's in the Mercedes in the camp. He knows where their development's going. He's got a good idea of what's going on within the team. He's got a good idea of the problems that they may be facing for 2026. Actually, bringing them in is a bit like a cheat sheet in some respects. Yes, he won't have all of the detailed information. We know that. And once any deal was done, he'd be locked out of it, as we know. But actually, having Valtteri Bottas on board is a really clever move. Now, the other seat, Sergio Perez, is the hot favourite. Carlos Slim money, 30 million plus, doing a lot of interviews now, which makes you think that he, again, like Valtteri, is putting himself out there. But Alpine have thrown a curveball into this. Now, some people think that I'm crazy when I talk about this, but see it from both Checo's point of view and Alpine's point of view. Now, Checo brings with him a wad of cash. That suits with what Alpine are trying to do. We've seen it with Franco Colapinto replacing Jack Durham. We know that the way Flavio Briatore has set this team up is for commercial value so that he can potentially sell the team at some point. That's what streamlining the factory is all about. That's what getting rid of the engine program is all about. It's geared towards a selling of the team. Now, we know that Luca Di Maio is obviously set down. He was the one who brought in Flavio Briatore. That puts a question mark over the whole of Alpine's future in Formula One, if I'm being honest. Someone else coming in from the Renault board may actually do a variety of things. They may strip it all back and go, actually, we want Renault back on those cars. We don't want Alpine. We don't want this vanity project, as some have called it, with hyping our sports car. We want that Renault name, that Renault logo back on that car for maximum exposure, maximum visibility. That could happen. What could happen as well is they could see it as a way out. They could go, actually, Flavio Briatore is doing exactly what Luca Di Maio's brought him in to do, which is to streamline the team ready to be sold. So, you know what? We're going to wait and then we're going to cash out. That's what we're going to do, because as a Renault board, we're sick and tired of chucking money at it with very little success. Those are options that are open, but also a big question mark. Now, where did Checo fit in with this? Checo fits in because ultimately that Mercedes engine, with what we're hearing, with what we're being told, puts Alpine in a driver's seat in terms of winning the championship. We've seen what's happened with McLaren when they get a customer engine. These engines are no longer substandard. They're no longer behind. They are the same ones that are in the main works team. So ultimately, you've got a team which you're getting the same engine. So if you get the aero package right, you're going to be competitive. This is what Flavio Briatore has been alluded to. This is what has got actually Alpine's excitement up. Their biggest problems over the past few years has been their poor engines, and now they're going to guess what's potentially been billed as one of the best on the grid. Whether or not that turns out to be true, we obviously don't know, but the rumours are that the Mercedes engine is all powerful. Now, Checo's thinking to himself, well, actually, if I go to Alpine, yes, obviously Cadillac have got the Ferrari engine, but they're new, they're starting up. How much do I trust them? But Alpine, actually, with some smart recruitment that they're doing and some improvements they have been making and are capable of making, because ultimately what they say, even in terms of the engine performance, they can obviously put back into it in terms of developing the team. Yes, there's a cost cap involved, we all know that, but also Alpine or Renault have been heavily invested in 2026 already. So actually, does that fit with what Checo's trying to do? He could establish himself as a lead driver. They would probably most likely keep Pierre Gasly on. That would keep the French contingent happy. Plus, he's a damn good racer. And why wouldn't you want to keep Pierre Gasly on? So you could almost end up with a former Red Bull partnership of Checo and Pierre Gasly leading Alpine. That's not unheard of. That kind of fits still, which is why I think Checo's dragging his feet a bit. I think he's playing his options open. I think Cadillac wants him. They certainly want the money that Checo brings. But I think Checo is playing a bit smart by keeping those options and that door open, just in case actually Alpine might provide a different outlet for him. Now, with regards to Cadillac being at Silverstone, this makes perfect sense. They're based in the UK, is obviously around the corner from Silverstone. They're going to want to show profile there. They're going to want to show their faces there. It fits, I think, Dan Towers, who's, of course, in charge of TW Global, which is the main business behind the Cadillac Formula One team. He's going to be there. Why wouldn't he be there? So they're going to use this as an opportunity to talk to drivers. We know that most drivers will be there in terms of Bottas, Joe. Joe is obviously a Ferrari Junior Academy driver. We've talked about this on the podcast previously. He brings with him that cash from the Chinese contingent, but also appeases Ferrari in terms of them having a reserve driver in a seat in exchange for supplying an engine. We know that Haas did that quite a bit. Obviously, they've done it with Ollie Behrman, but we also know that Haas are moving away from that with the Toyota Gazoo Racing partnership that they're establishing. So actually, Ferrari need an outlet for junior stroke reserve drivers, and by supplying Cadillac until 2029, to provide them with an outlet to do that. So don't rule that move out. So whilst Joe on paper may not look like the strongest, he's also Graham Loudon's former sort of protege in terms of Graham was his manager. I don't know if he still is or not, or whether or not Graham's given up since he's obviously taken the team principal role at Cadillac. But there's lots of links there as well to put Joe in that team. So I wouldn't rule Joe out just yet, especially if Checo makes the right noises of going towards Alpine. Cadillac may go with a Joe and Bottas partnership. Now, in terms of not having an American on board, Checo kind of ticks that box. He's actually hugely popular in America. If you go to American Grand Prix, I know that when we went to Vegas, it was the same. I've heard people talk about it at Austin. All of the Red Bull stuff changed to Checo. He had massive marketing ability, so whilst he doesn't tick the box of being American, he's still big in that market and an instantly recognisable name, and of course opens up that Mexican market as well. So actually, Cadillac doing a Bottas and a Checo partnership is a win-win for me. Two experienced drivers who, like I've said before, if they're in a position to capitalise and win a race, or per chance they're in that position, then actually, from that point of view, if you find yourself in a Monaco, for example, where you're suddenly near the front end because of a bit of weather, safety car, crash, whatever, Bottas and Perez have got the experience to capitalise that into a win. If you're in a points position, those two drivers have the experience to do that. They've also worked well with developing teams. They've also worked well with teams on a budget. So actually, those two as a partnership, when you're coming into Formula One, whilst may not be blockbuster names, will probably be a better bet and a safer bet than bringing a rookie in, who you've got potential of then learning and not being able to give you feedback on the car, potentially damage to your car. Yes, I know people are going to go, what about Checo? He brought more than enough damage to his car when he's at Red Bull. But when you bring 30 million to counteract that balance, it kind of weighs it out, doesn't it? So I still think my choice, if it was me right now, I would go for Bottas and I would go for Checo. That would be my partnership. It brings experience, it brings money, it brings an opening to both a demographic market in terms of what those two can achieve in representative countries and also on social media, and also brings two household names who you could easily market and shows the force of joining the Formula One grid, which is ultimately what Cadillac want to do when they're starting out with. So that's where my money would be. In terms of them being at Silverstone, it's not a surprise. I expect them to be there with their headquarters around the corner. Remains to be seen. In terms of announcement, like I said, if I was running social media and I was running the marketing at Cadillac, my aims would be firmly on the Austin Grand Prix and making it work there. That's where my money would be in terms of the smart money. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on this one in comments. Who do you think is getting the Cadillac seats? I'm really intrigued to know. Have we moved away from that Colton Herta Perez sort of partnership we all talked about for so long? And now are we moving towards a Bottas and Checo partnership? Are we talking a Bottas and Joe partnership? Are we talking a Perez and Joe partnership? Are we talking Ralf Schumacher into the mix? Let me know your thoughts on this one. Not Ralf, sorry, Schumacher. The amount talking Ralf does, he probably wants to get a drive, but no Mick Schumacher, not Ralf. That would be a turn up for the books, wouldn't it? But yeah, let me know your thoughts on that one. Who's going to drive for Cadillac in 2026? Formula One movie review. Now, Dad and I saw this on Monday. I'm not going to put any spoilers on here because I'm one who hates having things spoiled online. So I'm not going to be one of those people who tell you all about the storyline. What I will say is what I said in lots of my videos, and I've done an article over on the website. Head on over to that one, click articles, you'll see all the articles on there. Lots of stuff about this, lots of stuff about other things that I do, daily sort of articles on there. So feel free to check that one out. Now, in terms of the movie itself, it's a really good movie if you're a Formula One fan. It's not good for telling a good storyline in the sense of something that's realistic. It's a film fundamentally. It's not good in terms of interaction with the paddock, in terms of if you want to see your favourite drivers on the big screen interacting. Yes, they're on there, but it's more of a passing that they're on there, which was disappointing for me. In terms of the cast, Brad Pitt does a great job as what he does. But in terms of like the female leads, I feel that this was an opportunity missed. They had a great opportunity to really make a difference with female characters. They put them into really good positions. So you've got a technical director role, and you've also got like a lead pit crew role for, I think it's Rosie, who plays the part on that one. And for me, they missed an opportunity with this because they didn't do enough with it. They kind of put them in, and it feels like it's a token gesture, if I'm being honest. It feels like their characters have so much depth they could have explored and made a real big stand on advocating females in Formula One and motorsport in general, and they completely missed it by making the romantic storyline we've heard so much about with the technical director and Brad Pitt, and also with the girl in the pit crew. They didn't do enough with her storyline neither, when actually they had a lot of screen time which could have been great in terms of putting a really solid foundation into making that the norm in Formula One. That's been the biggest disappointment. In terms of film, I called it Top Gun with tire blankets. So if you're a Top Gun fan, you're going to love it. I would say we watched it in IMAX. On the screen, it's absolutely amazing. The sounds, the gravel, the crashes, the gear shifts, the wheel guns, all those things on a big screen in IMAX was absolutely fantastic. So if you are a fan, go and see it. If you're a fan and you want to see it in terms of a realistic storyline, No, because it's the most unrealistic storyline ever, but it's a film. If you watch Top Gun, you'd understand that a Maverick flying at the age he is and doing the missions wouldn't happen in real life. So take it for what it's intended for. It's going to open up a massive opportunity for new fans coming into Formula One. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they integrate into the world of Formula One. We know there's certain people within Formula One who like to gatekeep, and I, for one, feel they're going to probably struggle with this because I think the boom is going to be absolutely massive from this. The marketing is second to none. Yeah, we're talking Brad Pitt's been driving a McLaren around COTA. He's been at the F1 arcade. He's done the F1 podcast. You've seen all of the advertising. You've seen all of the social media behind it. There's loads going behind this. Apple obviously putting their money behind it as well. So yeah, for me, it's a good film. Go watch it. You'll enjoy it, but take it with what it is. It's a film. Right. Updates. We're going to have a quick talk about updates. Ferrari updates for Austria. Lots to talk about this one online. They are having a new floor, but the rear suspension that they're hoping is ready for Silverstone is now in doubt, which is going to be a big blow to Ferrari fans. They were kind of hoping that the floor and the rear suspension would come into play. We know that Red Bull have got a final update push, is what Helmut Marko's called it. He's called it the final package before they switch off development into 2026. Helmut Marko's been quite open about that. I expect the other teams to be doing that, if not already. Mercedes are carrying on with this very drip-feeding introduction they're doing with little and often. We know they made some tweets for the last race out in Canada. They've also got some tweets for Austria. It seems to be a very little effect rather than one big package. That seems to be their philosophy this year. It's worked quite well for them in terms of understanding the car and what they can get out of it. Is when everyone's interested in, though, can this floor solve their problems? Can this floor make them competitive? Lewis Hamilton's already wrote off 2025. He's talking about 2026 now. I think realistically, the fans got ahead of themselves. Once Lewis went to Ferrari, there was this notion online that suddenly Ferrari were going to win championships again. It was never going to be the case, not with this current car. Let's be honest, the SF25 has been nowhere near good enough. I think what Ferrari fans want to see is some podiums, some consistency. I think what Fred needs is that. I think Fred's under a great amount of pressure. I think he needs something to appease the fans and appease the board. I think if these upgrades make a step change in the right direction, he will be given another season. I think if Ferrari continue their current vein of performance, I think Fred is out at the end of the season ultimately. I don't think the Ferrari board will keep it for that long. The only good thing that Fred's got going for him is that both Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc actually rate him and want him there. And I suppose it depends how much the board want to upset the apple cart on that one. But as it stands, Ferrari got a new floor. Red Bull have got a final upgrade push, and Mercedes have talked about some, but not big upgrades for Austria this weekend. Red Bull have talked about bringing theirs to both Austria and Silverstone. So what I'm imagining is that Max will get them first, Yuki will get them second. I believe that's the way that's being played out. So in true Red Bull fashion, it's not all going to be ready for Austria. So Yuki will get it in Silverstone, Max will get it first in Austria. So don't be surprised to see that happen or be announced later on this week, obviously with the Austrian Grand Prix happening this weekend. So flying through it this week, 17 minutes down, we're going to talk about driving standards. Wow, this document is it's amazing. So, for those who don't know, this is a document that has caused massive debate online. This document has been referred to by the stewards for ages now. This is the driving standards document. Now, the version they released today is version 4.1. It's dated February 20th, 2025. It was basically coming out on the back of Qatar last year. Now, this is the first time this has been made available to the public. It's been a document we've never been able to get a hold of, but the stewards refer to in their stewards penalties, which is really annoying, to be honest. So this talks about what happened. So you got to remember, first and foremost, as always, I've done an article on this over on the website. So if you do want to check out more details, head on over to there. And the links for these documents are in that article as well, if you want to download them and read them for yourself. There's two documents. There's a driving standards guidelines and a penalty guidelines as well. But again, what they are quick to notice is these are guidelines, not regulations. It is up to the stewards to interpret this as they see fit to do so. Now, they're talking, the biggest one to me on the driving standard is the overtaking one. This is the one that's caused so much controversy online, so much talk about whose corner was it. Now, what it says is overtaking on the inside of a corner. To be entitled to be given room when overtaking on the inside, the overtaking car must have its front axle at least alongside the mirror of the other car prior to and at the apex. Be driven in a fully controlled manner, particularly from entry to apex and not have dived in. And in the steward's estimation, have taken a reasonable racing line and been able to complete the move whilst remaining within track limits. That is the guidelines the drivers look for overtaking on the inside of a corner. Now, overtaking on the outside of the corner, the rules actually do change, which is where we get a lot of controversy online. So overtake on the outside would always be viewed as a much more difficult manoeuvre to accomplish for the driver. To be entitled to be given room, including at the exit of the corner, when overtaking on the outside, the overtaking car must have done the following: have its front axle ahead of the front axle of the other car at the apex. So not alongside, ahead of the front axle. So not the mirrors, the actual axle. At the actual apex of the corner. They must be again driven in a controlled manner from entry to apex and to exit. And they must of course be able to make the corner within track limits. That is the biggie for me. That is crystal clear on what they do. Now, they also talk about a lot of things such as important notes. So it says racing is a dynamic process. Although these guidelines indicate specific positions of the cars at various points, the stewards will always look at the situation played out in total when reviewing it. Now, for example, they put how did the cars get to the incident, e.g. was it late braking, diving in, moving under braking, was the manoeuvre late or optimistic, what could the drivers reasonably see, know or anticipate, do we believe the manoeuvre could be completed, was there any understeer, oversteer or any lock-in, did someone position or handle their car in a way that contributed to the accident, what type of corner was it, so did it have a camber, a curve, did it have a curb on there, apexes, and what were the relative tyres in terms of age and grip. So all of these are really important context to those questions. So it's not just as straightforward as my car was alongside or my car was ahead. It's actually all of those bits into it. Does it make this clearer? No, it kind of, you read through it and think actually some decisions will, like Lando Norris and the penalty points at the last track. Why wasn't that done? Now, they talk about obviously giving back lasting advantage. So should a car leave the track, the driver may be withdrawn. However, this may be done when it's safe to do so. Moving on the straight, they say you can only move once you're in the braking phase. So that's what they talk about that one. But again, what's defined as a braking phase? So there's some ambiguity in that one. Safety car, obviously big contentious one with George Russell last time out. 10 car lengths beyond, it says you can't do that. But then also says you must keep to your delta, which is the other problem. But then if you exceed your delta, you get a penalty, which is the problem George has on this one. So it goes into real great detail over it all. Now, in terms of penalties, it talks about, breach of personal curfew. There's a mandatory pit lane start. There's use of tyres without appropriate identification. That's actually disqualification in most cases. And it even breaks it up into free practice, qualifying, and the race itself in terms of penalties. So what it says is if you use your tyres, for example, without the appropriate identification during free practice and qualifying, you'll actually get a grid race penalty. If you do it in the actual race itself, you'll be disqualified. So it's actually quite clear on what it says. Driving unnecessarily slow during free practice is a warning or a reprimand. If you do it in qualifying, it's a reprimand or a grid pace penalty. If you do it in the race, it's actually a 5 to 10 second penalty. So it is quite clear in terms of what they're asking for. It's quite good in sense of, forcing driver off track. If it's free practice, reprimand, grid pace penalty, 10 second penalty baseline. So it does give you some real context into what the stewards do when they make their decisions. What it doesn't do, of course, is give you that context into why the stewards do certain things. I'm reading this thinking Lando Norris should have got penalty points in the last race. And I still don't understand reading this document why he didn't, if I'm honest. And they're the sort of things where I think now that this document's been made public, I think it's great it's been made public. I also think, though, that the FIA needs to now go into it in a bit more detail with the stewards' documents in terms of why they didn't do it. So maybe now that we've got the document, maybe we can have a bit more of an explanation into why they deemed not to. We get a bit of it, but I'd like to see a bit more of it, almost like a footnote to saying the reason is doof. And the reason is it's normally a 10-second penalty, but we gave this instead. We do see that a bit. It'd be unfair for me to say that we don't see it. However, I would like to see it a bit more on the documents going forward, especially in light of these. But it is super handy, and I'm super glad that we finally got them. Like I said, www.coffeecornermotorsport.com/articles to get the latest on this one, and also links to the documents. I've done a very quick crib sheet to it. I've done a very rough guide to it, as in the most important ones. But like I say, the actual FIA documents are linked to the bottom of the article. If you want to go see them and download both documents and keep them for yourself, feel free to do so. Right, in terms of news, that's all I've pretty much got this week. I mean, it's been an action-packed week, but I just want to talk about the podcast. I want to talk about the channel, and I want to delve into a bit personal. I struggled this week. I'm not going to lie. I've had one of them weeks where you just want to write off, does it? Yeah, it's been really tough. Jensen's had the increase in seizures. It's been hard work. I'm a one-man band. As anyone knows me, I try to do content. I try to write articles. I try to get a podcast out. I do all this myself in terms of what I actually do. Obviously, Joe's a great sport and make sure I've got time to do it. But in terms of what I do on this channel, it's just me. And I'm my worst critic. I'm the biggest critic going. I have standards that I set myself. I have things I want to achieve. I've got dreams, goals, ambitions. I struggle with ADHD. I struggle with sometimes prioritizing things. And sometimes it just gets on top of you. And this week was classic one of those weeks where on the school run, Jen's had a seizure. Now, if you've got a child who suffers from seizures, you'll know that the most scary thing in the world is when you're alone in a situation, and especially when you're alone driving. It's if I'm honest, it's the worst feeling in the world. You can see it happening, but you can't do anything about it. And then you go into pure fear. You're on the road, you're driving. He's having a seizure behind you. What do you do? And, ultimately, you got to try and find a safe place to pull in. I did that. I got a load of abuse from a driver behind because I was safe to do it, by the way. I indicated I did it all in a safe manner and I pulled in to check him. But I literally had to run to his door to open it. And as I did that, the car came quite close behind me, decided to wind down his window and give me a load of abuse for pulling over, even though it was safe to do so. Which, to be honest, made me feel like shit. And really sort of knocked my confidence. I suppose there's lots of things. You read into stuff and you kind of spiral out of things, don't you? And people who know me know that I make this for fun. This is my de-stress. This is my go-to when I need a release from that world. Because ultimately that world is very isolated, it's very lonely, and it's very consuming, and it can take over your life very quickly. So the reason I make content is to give me a break from that. It allows me to develop new skills. It allows me to keep my mind active. It allows me to do some great things as well, which I'm ultimately thankful of, and that's all down to people listening. But for me, I think sometimes, I spent a lot of soul searching yesterday where I didn't post hardly anything. I took myself offline. My coffee machine fucking broke as well, so it's used my French, but that really pissed me off. Coffee is my one voice that keeps me going. And when my coffee machine broke, it felt like the final fucking nail. So it's been an emotional week. There's been lots going on with the kids, lots of stuff to sort out. We're redoing the garden as well, because our garden's a typical new build property. We've been here 3 years. The grass has died and nobody wants to know about that. But we've been doing that as well. We've had to ourselves because of money and costs and things like that. And to be honest, I almost gave up the channel this week. I almost shut everything down. I was at a point yesterday where I sat there and went, is it worth it? I know there's some barriers to me making this channel a success. I don't fit a typical demographic. I know that I'm not as charismatic. I suppose what I'm trying to say is I know I'm not the best on camera. I know that ultimately, I have a speech impediment. I have ADHD. I struggle to make eye contact at times. I struggle to process things that are rumours and gossip because I like factual things, because that's how my mind works. And I get that. And I don't like posting stuff for clicks and clickbaits and that sort of thing. That's not my style at all. So I understand that I have those barriers in place. And I suppose sometimes you've got to take a step back and remember why you do it. And remember that even just that one message. So when someone messaged me and said, thank you for your content, I watched from another country and stuff, that kind of came through at the right time for me. And that person knows who they were, and I just want to thank them for taking that time to send the message, because it was at that time I felt really low, and no one kind of reaches out to you, no one kind of speaks to you because you don't want to show it in public because it's a sign of weakness. And ultimately I'm human. We have 4 disabled children. It's hard work, I ain't gonna lie. It's hard work anyway. It's not just that they're disabled. Anyone who's a parent or anyone who just goes through life, everyone has different levels of stress. Everyone has different levels of actually hard for them. And it's not a get out because they're disabled, and it's not a me thing. I understand that everyone goes through it. But sometimes it's good to just sit back and take stock and just look where you've come and look what you've done and look what you've achieved. I kind of sat there reflecting on it going, we've managed to build a community that actually is really inclusive. We've managed to build a website. We've managed to build weekly lives on TikTok, over 40,000 social media followers, over 3 million likes on TikTok alone. And for me, it was about remembering that. It was about remembering why I do it. It's about remembering why I set this channel up. And it was about interacting with all of you who interact into the page, into the podcast, who listen, who drop a comment. And I just want to say thank you from genuinely the bottom of my heart, because like I say, I almost deactivated all my accounts, and I'm glad I didn't. But it was reading through some of the comments, reading through some of the things people write, and reading through, sort of what people say, and that they take great joy in watching the videos and stuff. Because, like I said, I know that with the challenges I have, I know that with the challenges I have as a family, I want to do something different. I want to show people you can do it. Coffee Corner was never about being this big, this big social media thing at all. That was never the intention. What I want to do is show people that it's possible. I spent my life breaking down barriers. I spent my life fighting organisations who just don't understand things. I've found myself, I get knocked back loads of times. I get emails all the time from people saying, no, we don't want to deal with you. No, your channel's not big enough. No, you're not what we're looking for. And you know what? That's cool. I respect people's views on it. Do I think I could do a job for a lot of these teams and a lot of these brands and a lot of these partnerships? Of course I do. I've got faith in my ability. But one thing I won't do is I've got a stubbornness that refuses to give up. I've gone to court for our kids. I've literally taken on the government in terms of winning cases against them. I've taken on all our local councils. And that's not being big-headed. That's a drive that comes from when I feel I'm right, I will ultimately go after something with a passion and a mindset that is very full on, very, sort of all energy encompassing. And if I don't get that, there's a big load that follows that. So I think what I'm trying to say is Old Bunny Coffee Corner is it's out there to inspire people. It's out there to inspire people that, this is a shed ultimately. This is a shed in my garden. This is a laptop. This is a microphone. It's nothing more than that. I'm just a person who loves Formula One, who loves motorsport, who's got a shed, a coffee machine, now that my new one's been delivered, who's got a laptop, a microphone, shed, and has brought people in to interact with each other and people in to mix with each other. So for me, I just want to say thank you for being part of this journey. It means the absolute world to me. And if you are feeling down, reach out if you can. My DMs are open to people. If you feel you haven't got no one to talk to, send me a message, because I know exactly what that's like. I cried myself to sleep pretty much the other day thinking I can't do this shit anymore. And I'm not afraid to say that. And I'm thankful for the family I have around me. I'm thankful for the support I have. I'm thankful that Jo picks me up when I'm down, because she does an amazing job of that. My dad does the same. Took me to the cinema on Monday. A couple of things that were stressing me, just boxed off straight away and went, no, we'll sort that. Let's deal with that. So for me, I suppose it's, if you do feel alone, you never are. My DMs are open. Drop a DM into me on any of the social medias or WhatsApp. Go for the website, anything like that, because I don't want people to think they're alone when they're not. Because if it wasn't for this amazing community that we've all built, then I probably would struggle to see where I am now. Because ultimately, when I started Coffee Corner Motorsport, I was at a real low point in my life. So for me, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this journey. I apologise if the content hasn't been great. I apologise if it's not the normal standard or way you expect it to be, but I hope that sometimes people understand that family have to come first, and that the kids' health is first and foremost, and I'm never going to not prioritise that. So I suppose for me it was a bit around not looking at numbers, not looking at what I need to do for the channel, but more about what I need to do for me and taking myself out of the equation and give me that headspace to do it. So don't be afraid to do it. Don't be afraid that if you need a break, to take a break. It is a hectic calendar. Anyone who makes content will tell you that. It is very time consuming. It does take a lot of energy, and especially when, like most creators, it's just you on your own doing it. It takes a lot to put even the most basic of video out sometimes. So I just want to say thank you for the support. I want to say thank you to the person who dropped into my DMs when I needed it the most. I really appreciate that. And I just want to say thank you to Jo and Dad for picking me up, because without them, I'm not too sure what I would have done this week. But I know for sure this podcast and this channel probably wouldn't have been here without all of you and all of that. Massive thank you for me. Thank you for tuning in. Like I said, there is a subscribe, like, follow button if you do get the opportunity to hit it. And I will see you all next week on Coffee Corner Motorsport, Full Beans, the podcast. You've been listening to me, Terry, and this is Formula One Espresso News.